If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
You smell that, Knicks fans? That's the smell of a statement win. You smell that, Knicks fans? That is the smell of an IQ masterclass. You smell that, Knicks fans? That is the makings of an Eastern Conference contender. This is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast. I am EJ Stewart, joined by Tommy Beer. Tommy, what a win we have to talk about on this show. We'll be talking about this amazing double overtime win Knicks got against the Celtics. We'll also preview their game coming up on Tuesday against the Charlotte Hornets, and then a really major story that's kind of impacting the entire league regarding the situation with Ja Morant. So we'll talk about that as well, but what a win the Knicks got in Boston on Sunday.
Nothing. I figure should we talk maybe about some off-season signings, or think about look at the draft position, or I think this. I think we have something to talk about here, and we've kind of mentioned it that the Knicks were kind of trending in the direction of a team that is legitimate. They have arrived, folks. 9 in a row. Obviously, you could make an argument the best week for a Knicks team in 20 years. Maybe Linsanity's in the conversation. But beating the Celtics, then the Nets, then the Heat in Miami, then the cherry on top of a week-long Sunday, IQ 38 special in Boston to beat the Celtics, a Celtics team that was desperate for a victory.
Yeah.
This Knicks team right now, 20-12 on the road this season. That's tied for the most road wins this season. 28-16 against the Eastern Conference this season. That's tied with the Celtics for the most wins against Eastern Conference opponents this season. This isn't a little stretch. This isn't a fun little team. Expectations are raised now. The Knicks have arrived. They did this without Jalen Brunson. They're on-court leader, the starting point guard. This is a team win as much as it is, remembered as the IQ game, but, a team win. And again, no team's going to say it. No player's going to say it. Nobody wants to face these Knicks in the 2023 playoffs.
Could not agree with you more. We'll get more into this game. But again, this is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast hosted by Audacy and WFAN. You can get these episodes of the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service so you can get these episodes whenever we drop. We drop 3 times a week. This will be the first episode of this week. Hopefully another week of wins. That's all we've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 weeks as the Knicks have been on this 9-game winning streak. So make sure you hit the auto download feature on your podcast streaming service so you can get these episodes. And also check us out on YouTube. You can watch our full episodes and segments of these episodes on the Audacy Sports YouTube channel. So check us out on YouTube. Check us out on whatever your streaming service is. We're coming at you any way we can. Just like the Knicks, we're coming out of the gates hot in this one. So let's talk about this big win. So the Knicks sent a statement to the entire NBA, outlasting the Boston Celtics 131-129 on the road. The Knicks got a heroic performance from Immanuel Quickley. He was inserted into the starting lineup for an injured Jalen Brunson, who sat out this game with a sore foot. Brunson, we hurt that foot in a miraculous game we didn't even get to talk about, was that Miami Heat win they had on Friday. Brunson got hurt in that game, finished that game, but was unable to play on Sunday. Quickly goes into the starting lineup. He plays 55 minutes in this game, scores 38 points, a career high. He also adds 8 rebounds. He adds 7 assists. He scored 7 points in the second overtime period. He scored the Knicks' first 7 points of that second overtime period in which they found a way to win. You also got 31 and 9 from Julius Randle. RJ Barrett at 29 points and 11 rebounds. It was a back and forth game. The Knicks got down by 14 points in the third quarter. It looked like the game was going to slip away. Then they stormed back. They ended up going up 12 in the fourth. And then, typical Knicks fashion, the Celtics come back and they force the game to overtime. The game really came down to one possession. The Celtics had the ball, Knicks up 2. Tatum passing to Horford in the corner for a 3. Mitchell Robinson contests. Horford misses. Celtics lose. Knicks win. Tatum finished with 40 in this one. Jaylen Brown added 29. This is 9 straight wins for the New York Knicks. So, Tommy, I'll start it here. Is this the best win of the Knicks season?
Yeah, I think you can certainly say that. All the factors coming into the game, because remember, not only had the Knicks beaten the Celtics earlier this week, Monday at the Garden, Celtics had a very disappointing loss against the Nets where they gave up a huge 28-point lead. They wanted this win, and because of that reason, the intensity was ratcheted up right from the very start. The commentators talked about it. You could feel the physicality, watching the game on TV. Certainly, the players, just the emotions. This was a playoff atmosphere. This was a playoff intensity type game. So for the Knicks to beat the Celtics, who have basically been the best team in the NBA previous to their stumbles the last couple of weeks for for 80-90% of the season, or at least in the conversation with the Bucks and the Nuggets, they for the Knicks to go into Boston, beat that team that was really looking for a win without their starting point guard, I think speaks volumes. And the wins kind of have compounded upon each other. So it's like, Friday was probably the best win of the season until Sunday. Last Monday was the best win of the season until Wednesday. So these things are, continue to and again, we've talked about it previously. The one knock against the Knicks during their 8-game winning streak back in December was the quality of opponents. That's out the window. The Knicks are beating good teams. They're destroying bad teams. So it's just there's a certainly, there's some other games in the conversation. But to me, considering the stakes, the anticipation, the intensity of the game, for the Knicks to go into Boston and, Tatum 40-point game, Jaylen Brown 29. They're two big guys doing what they do. For the Knicks to win that contest, I think speaks volumes. And I think it probably qualifies as the best win of the year.
Yeah, I would agree. This to me is the best Knicks win. But at this point, the Knicks are getting to the point where you almost can't even keep saying best win of the season anymore because the Knicks are now a good team. Like, you now have to expect that the Knicks can beat the top teams in the NBA, which is a statement that I would not think I would be saying a month ago or a month and a half ago. But with the way they've been playing pretty much since the calendar 2023, these are just the things the Knicks can do. Like, they can go into Boston and beat a desperate Celtics team that's trying to get a win when they got Tatum and Brown both combining for what 70, almost 80, almost 69 points, almost 70 points in this one. Like, that, you think you put that on a number, you say, okay, Knicks lose that one. There's no way they come up with that game. But this is what the Knicks can do now. Like, this is the way they're capable of beating people. And Emmanuel quickly in this one, just a masterclass. And it was truly crazy to kind of watch him dominate the Celtics, because that's what was happening. The Celtics, I thought, made some crucial mistakes in terms of how they were guarding quickly in this game. The Celtics play a switch everything defense, and I think in some ways they kind of they do the Knicks playbook so well that at times they were able to just kind of like have the Knicks run their pistol action and get the exact guy they want on RJ or the exact guy they want on Randall after like 4 switches. It was crazy how good the Celtics were defensively. But when they got to the fourth quarter and overtime, they were doing this non-switch defense, and the Knicks kind of went away from their offense. They kind of stopped running sets, which hurt them in one sense, but actually helped them because it allowed IQ to heat seek Grant Williams. So Grant Williams, who is a pretty good defender, but not good at defender guarding point guard, then I got like IQ, is guarding Emmanuel quickly. I thought that was a massive mistake because IQ was just barbecuing him. There was a lot of issues with Zula and how he closed that game, but I thought that was a big mistake, and IQ took advantage. Just the confidence he had. He's a complete scorer now. This is a guy, remember, he couldn't finish at the rim. Everything was floaters or contested shots. Now he's able to finish at the rim. Now he's blowing by guys clean. Like he would, and that's the other thing I want to mention about him too. And I've said this before on this show, and this is the podcast I'm going to stand 10 toes down and really emphasize this. We do not talk about how well conditioned Emmanuel quickly is. I know it's because he plays short minutes. I know, like, we think, okay, he's playing 25 minutes, he's giving you all this energy. But this guy he outlasted everybody. I mean, IQ the Iron Man is what I called him after this game, because it just was clear that everybody else, and I'm talking all 9 guys, the Celtic guys and the Knicks guys, all were just exhausted by the end of this game. And this was the only guy that was still playing like it was the first quarter. He's just running by guys clean. There were plays in the fourth quarter where fast breaks, but he's just running past everybody for layups. And I think that is a testament to the work he did in the offseason. You saw the weightlifting he was doing. You saw the conditioning stuff he was doing. He was posting that stuff. And I think that it played a massive advantage for him in this game.
Bro, 2 minutes into the second overtime. So he's 52 minutes into the game at this point. He scores the first 7 points in the second overtime and is skipping up and down the floor. Skip to my Lou, like my daughter up and down the street. Going to the toy store, just skipping, playing with so much joy and enthusiasm and happiness. You're 100% right on his conditioning. And the thing about some bench guys, when they log heavy minutes and IQ's up over 31 minutes per game this year, is a lot of times they don't have the benefit of starting, coming out, and then going back in again. They got to play long stretches at a time. We see Hart do this. We've seen, obviously since he arrived, and IQ has done this, where he'll come in the third quarter and play the rest of the way, if he has a hot hand. And that's what he did. A couple of things on Emmanuel quickly, and we could spend the whole hour of this podcast talking about that game, and his performance and his progression. 55 minutes, 1 turnover for a guy playing point guard, for somebody who some folks claimed couldn't play point guard.
I know.
Emmanuel quickly, the last 12 games he started, dating back to the final game of the regular season, 21-22. He started 12 games. In that span, he's averaging, over those 12 games, averaging 20.8 points, 5.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists versus just 1 turnover. That seems pretty good.
Yeah.
And having that, and something we've talked about, before, is when now it's not even if, when the Knicks get to the postseason, let's say, knock on wood, something crazy doesn't happen. How would they fare? Because history tells us you need a superstar to be competitive, and make any real substantial noise in the postseason. But the Knicks don't have a superstar, but they do have 2 talented, high caliber guys playing at an All NBA level in Brunson and Randall, of course. Now you factor in IQ's, his projection, his trajectory. He's not on that all-star level yet, but he showed, Sunday night in Boston. And to your point, Brunson scored. Jason Tatum scored 40 points. Jaylen Brown scored 29. Jason Tatum's going to finish in the top 5 in MVP voting this year.
Yeah.
He had 40, 11, and 6 last night. He was the second best player on the court. Emmanuel quickly was the best player in the game last night, in an important game for both teams. And it just, again, it speaks volume about how well, he continues to grow as a player. The evolution he's taken, never complained, never bellyached about coming off the bench last season when we all thought he should have started. Just put his nose down, got to work, grinded out, got bigger, got stronger. And as you know, he's a 3-level scorer now. And we've talked about the 38 points. We haven't even discussed his defensive last night. His ability to hedge over screens, fight through, draw offensive fouls by doing the Brunson things, by fighting over screens. His length, his ability, the way he sees the floor and helps his teammates, and switches and runs back. There's just so much. And to your point, the Celtics had a great game plan, and it worked. They're switching, and whenever, and we'll talk about that too. Whenever Randall turned around and spun, a second guy would come, strip him from the ball. Happened a bunch of times. Randall finished with 7 turnovers. Happened a few times in the clutch. But one of the reasons the Knicks were able to get offense is because they got out of their sets. And the one player on their team that is great at freewheeling with the ball in his hands is Emmanuel quickly. He'll take those heat check threes. First possession of the game, he pulls from 29 feet and drain. And you could just see the confidence brimming and building. And he had fun the whole way. And the Knicks fans had fun watching. And the one thing, that, and I wrote about it this morning, was for years now, we've been kind of Knicks fans that have, listen, the Knicks have lost more games this century than any team in the NBA. Knicks fans are basically, through PTSD in a traumatic relationship, used to being, they just see the light at the end of the tunnel. No, it's a train coming the wrong way, and have been conditioned to believe that whatever can go wrong will go wrong. I found myself thinking in that third quarter, Knicks down 13. In Boston against the team with Tatum that's looking for a win. No point guard. Randall scuffling a bit. Grimes was invisible last night.
Yeah.
But somehow, some way, I just kind of had this feeling Knicks probably going to win it. Knicks have a chance to win. They at least have a chance to win this game. They're up in the fourth quarter. They're down. It's tight. It goes in overtime. I think Knicks might find a way to win this game. Second, to start a second overtime. IQ scores 7 points in a row. Knicks are going to find a way to win this game. And the last second shot, Horford has a good look, a shot. He's made 6 3-pointers that game. You think it knocks down, but sometimes the basketball gods just shine on you. And then you just, and that team, you just have a sense about, the right place at the right time, chemistry, whatever you want to use. The Knicks are that team at this moment, and it's fun to watch.
I'll tell you what, this Knicks team, the execution is not always perfect. In fact, oftentimes it's very imperfect. But the perseverance and the toughness this team has is special, because that game, I know you could bang on the officiating every game of an NBA season probably. I thought that was one of the worst officiated games I've seen from the Knicks on a Knicks game all season. I mean, Marcus Smart is just launching himself all over the court, and he's tricking the refs. And it was embarrassing to me the amount of times he was able to trick the refs. I mean, there was a foul on Mitchell Robinson where IQ crosses him up. He falls over Mitchell Robinson's foot, and they call the moving screen. I mean, some of this stuff, which is crazy. I mean, he fouled Randall 4 times before Randall finally elbows him in the face because he's like, yo, get off of me. And look, Randall deserved that tech. I had no problem with the tech, honestly. He's lucky he didn't get thrown out. And I had no problem with the elbow because I'm like, he's fouled this guy 4 times on that play.
And the thing that bothers me about that particular, I like Smart. I respect Smart. If he's on,
so do I.
Not on your team, you hate him. If he's on your team, you love him. We get all that. The issue I have is that particular foul with the elbow on Randall. I had a coach in college who told us, if you elbow a guy in his mouth and knock out his teeth, I will buy you a steak dinner after the game. Because one, it isn't a foul. The offensive player is allowed to have that space. If a guy gets up to you and is literally less than 1 inch from your body, how could, as an offensive player, you are allowed to turn around? Right. So that's just a pet peeve of mine. I've always that foul has always bothered me, that a defender can kind of cheat the system and get that foul goal.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And he was on one. I mean, and it seemed like every time the Knicks were making a run, it was like watching, a Ric Flair wrestling match where every time the babyface making a run and Ric Flair, grabs the ref and low blows the babyface right when the guy's making a run. That's what it felt like watching Marcus Smart. It felt like every time Knicks were making a run, like the Knicks were up 12, they have the ball. And I'm like, all right, they're going to put these guys away. What does he do? He just finds Obi Toppin and it just falls right in front of him. And he gets a charge. They come back. The Celtics get 2 threes. Now a 12-point game to 6-point game. I'm like, the Knicks will have to put these guys away in the fourth quarter in that possession. So, I mean, Marcus Smart, the officiating last night, absolutely horrendous.
Joe Mazzulla was, threw a couple veiled shots at the refs after Monday's game. And it's a shame because that shouldn't impact Sunday's game, but it looked like it did. And I don't talk about the refs too much, but that was poorly officiated game. And it seemed like it was a reaction to Monday's game.
I know Ed Malloy was out there. I didn't even recognize those other 2 refs. I was like, who are these guys? Like, and I watched a lot of NBA games. I was like, I don't know who these guys are. Like, the guy that Randall was arguing with that gave him the tech. I was like, I've never seen this ref before. So I don't know if that was I don't want to say a younger team, but maybe a less experienced team around Ed Malloy. But I thought he lost control of that game.
Also, I agree with you on Randall. Could have got ejected for that. He basically showed the ref that and then he got the tech for it. The ref did a good job by walking away and not prompting Randall. But Randall also did a good job. You could see it on the broadcast. I thought that was cool, where he literally took a few deep breaths and lowered his hands. I think, again, we've talked about his interaction with the media, his interaction with his teammates. That's another sign of progression. Randall last year would have got thrown out of that game at that
absolutely.
Moment. Would have body slammed somebody and went to. Yeah. So credit to Randall for his maturity. He talks about his mentals in check. That was a clear sign of it last night.
Yeah, I thought, honestly, as bad as officiating was in the game, I thought that was an instance where both people showed good restraint. Yes. Randall not body slamming that ref for that ridiculous call, and the ref for not throwing him out for bumping him. I thought both. I was like, okay, this is the one thing I can say this is actually done well. Everything else about that game was miserable. Speaking on Randall, I got to be honest about Randall's game last night. The totality of his numbers will look fine, besides the turnovers. I think he hit some big shots in this game. I don't think he played a good game last night. Some of those turnovers he had, some of the block shots he had where, he's shooting and Jaylen Brown was just ripping the ball out of his hands as he's going up for shots. Like, he's got to be better than what he was. I didn't really quite understand the Knicks thinking that they could keep attacking Smart with Randall. Like, if anybody watches Celtics, my brother who hosts the New Generation Sports Talk with me, he's a Celtics fan, so I watch Celtics a lot. Like the Celtics actually like putting Marcus Smart on bigger power forward wing type guys, so that's a matchup they're extremely comfortable with. So I didn't really like his approach to how he was attacking this team. When he saw Grant Williams, that's a matchup he usually dominates, so he was trying to be aggressive. But the turning his back on the Celtics defense and spinning was leading to a lot of turnovers. I thought on the last possession, I guess it was regulation or overtime, I forgot which one it was. IQ brings the ball up the court. IQ should have been the guy who had the ball in his hands on that final possession. He kind of bullies IQ into giving him the ball. I know Randall hit a monster shot in Miami, and that was a great shot. I know he can hit those shots. But with the way IQ was playing, the way out, and how red hot he was, I thought Randall got a little hero ballish last night, and that was a little frustrating. In some ways, I thought as good as he played in some instances, I thought he hurt the team. And also, his defense and rebounding up until overtime was awful. I mean, it was a lot of the old Randall. It was, not seemed to be kind of in tune, late on rotations, not boxing people out. Randall has held himself accountable all season, so I don't expect that he'll play that way again. But I just think it needs to be noted that that 31-9, they needed the totality, the volume of those numbers, but he needs to play a lot better than that.
I don't disagree with you at all. But I think it's noteworthy to point out that 31 on 50% shooting, he was 11-22.
I know.
9 rebounds, 4 assists qualifies as, and it can still be a bad game from Randall. That's as good as
he's playing. Exactly.
As he's played of late. And I agree with you. Defensively, he wasn't up to snuff Sunday night. I think a lot of it, part of it is partly due to the excessive minutes he's played. He hasn't missed a game all season, to his credit. Interestingly, he talked about he doesn't believe in load management. He understands the science. I have my own science, he said. And then they asked him about it after the game, after he logged another close to 15 minutes in double overtime. He's like, you know what? Maybe I'll reconsider. He said it joking around with a smile. But I honestly should the Knicks consider sitting him out Tuesday night in Charlotte, or at least limiting like 25 minutes or so. I think that might be something that, that the Knicks could consider. Brunson, the Brunson injury as well. We'll talk about that previewing Tuesday night's game. And we can talk about this after as well. But I think we can. I don't have a problem with Randall taking or attempting, didn't even get a shot up, attempting to take the last shot. I think he's earned that, over the last, certainly after Friday night and over the last 3 or 4 months. Like Brunson was on the floor. Brunson's going to get those shots more often than not when he's in the game. So I think Randall entered the game believing I got to step up. I got to play at a higher level and just put a little bit extra pressure on himself. And seemed a little bit worn down at times. So we'll see again, whether he sits out Tuesday night or not. There's 15 games, I think, left in the season. The Knicks look like they have a very good chance at securing the 5 seed, if not the 4 seed, but being in that 4-5 slot. Now we have to think about, okay, what's best for when we get to the playoffs for that first round series? Should we start to, taper Randall's minutes for a few minutes so hopefully he's as fresh as possible heading into the, once April arrives in mid-April and that first round starts.
And I'm glad you mentioned Randall and the fatigue and the low management comments, because he also, after Friday's game, there was a question he was asked, and he was like, "Bro, I'm so tired. I don't even know what you just told me."
Yeah. Yes.
So I think that the lack of rebounding and defense that we saw can be attributed to, I think, fatigue. I think he is tired. Like I think I tweeted last time, I was like, he looks exhausted in this game.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he wasn't really given the effort we were used to seeing from him defensively and on the boards. So yeah, they gotta be smarter how they finish this season. This is a Hornets game they have coming up that you would think they should be able to watch these guys. So maybe this is a time where Obi Toppin can get more reps. One thing I thought was good about that game was it did give IQ the chance to start and play a lot. And it gave Deuce McBride a chance to, get off the bench and get some minutes as well, because you never know what's gonna happen in the playoffs, and he needs to be used at a certain point. So I thought that Brunson, that's why I was happy they sat Brunson. I tweeted, I was like, I think they should sit him. He's questionable, he shouldn't play. This is they've won 8 in a row at this point. There's a team they know they can beat already. Yes. They've beaten them on the road, they've beaten them at home. Like, it's a rivalry game, it's national TV, you want to win, but like there's actually things that could be beneficial to the team by Brunson actually sitting. And the fact that they still got to win, it just illustrates just how good this Knicks team is. I mean, I look at this Knicks team, and I've been saying, and I keep moving this goalpost now because the expectations keep changing. I kept saying, okay, Knicks face Cleveland. I think they could beat them in the playoff series. Then I saw Philly. That's all the Knicks play against Philly. I'm all right. Knicks play against Philly. I think that they could face Philly and they could square up with Philly. I'm adding Boston to that mix now. The Bucks right now to me are the only team that I would say, okay, Knicks face them. It's gonna be tough sledding. I don't know how they win that series. I don't think that the Knicks can. I'm not saying I'm definitely picking the Knicks against the Celtics, but I don't look at the Celtics right now as a team that the Knicks can't beat in a 7-game series. The Knicks just seem very confident, and it goes back to even last season. They had those great games last season against the Boston Celtics, even when they were a terrible team last season.
Yeah.
It just feels like they played very confident against them. I don't know what it is. They seem to like these matchups. RJ Barrett, who I think has kind of been the most kind of like untalked about player in this game. He was a hero in this game, the way he played. He actually kind of supplemented IQ scoring in a lot of different parts of this game. He seems to play very confident against the Boston Celtics. He had 29-11 in this one. We mentioned IQ. Randall sees Grant Williams. He thinks he should be able to dominate him every time he sees him. They didn't have Jalen Brunson, but Jalen Brunson's had his way with the Celtics this season earlier as well. I mean, the Celtics are a great team. I'm not saying that the Knicks are going to walk through them, but there's only one team in the Eastern Conference that I'm fearful of if I'm the New York Knicks right now.
Listen, it's fair. Obviously, the Celtics would be a heavy favorite. Maybe not even a heavy favorite, but obviously favored in a series as with the Sixers. But I agree with you. It wouldn't be shocking to see the Knicks make the Cavs sweat. If not, maybe New York might be favored at this point. I saw CBS. I saw on Twitter just before we hopped on. CBS has the Knicks ranked number 1 in the league in their latest power rankings. Part of that is because they have it's more on the hottest team, and obviously the Knicks have the longest win streak in the NBA right now with the Bucks winning streak snapped over the weekend. So I listen. The game before on the national TV game before the Knicks Celtics was Suns Mavs, and Knicks fans got to keep an eye on it because when they face the Suns, assuming the Suns come out of the West in the finals, we'll see who has the advantage. So maybe we're looking a little bit too far ahead. And again, but you're right. Listen, certainly we've got to the stage now where the Knicks shouldn't be afraid. And as I mentioned, teams are not going to admit it, but they would definitely prefer to play a non-Knicks team in the first round if given their choice, because the Knicks are at worst a live dog at the moment. A couple quick things. You mentioned RJ. Credit to Barrett. Not only did he have 29 points, he kind of set the tone early. He got going. Yeah. The thing with RJ, he just seems so much. It's clear he's more comfortable being that second guy.
Yeah.
So when Brunson's out of the lineup, he's more of a featured player, a little bit more space on the floor for him to drive, and he has a little more offensive freedom. You can tell when he's the way the Knicks are structured and they're kind of rigid. The way they run their offense. The third best player is really often relegated to spot up 3-pointers or spot up shots.
Yeah.
And that's not where RJ Barrett's going to excel. When he's at his best, over the first few years of his career, it's when he's kind of a focal point of the offense, attacking, playing downhill. He doesn't really have as much an opportunity to do that with Brunson and Randall on the floor together. So I thought he played well last night in a game he knew the Knicks needed him. He stepped up and, again, there's some warts there. You don't love the inefficiency. There were some defensive plays that weren't great. But overall, competitiveness and just, he supplied points when the Knicks needed points. So credit for RJ for a big game.
Yeah, just an awesome win all around. Knicks outlast the Boston Celtics. Still in that 5th spot. Still eyeing that 4th spot. We'll see how this goes, but just an awesome moment. And this is an awesome moment for Knicks fans. Just even seeing just the celebration from Knicks fans on social media after that win, and to see how many people are engaged with this team now. Like you mentioned, the PTSD Knicks fans face. There are a lot of Knicks fans who, really don't want to, I think, get engaged because they don't want to be hurt again, So they kind of just like, oh yeah, we'll see what happens. But there are a lot of people watching that game because they've been hearing about how the Knicks have been playing, and they're playing against the Boston Celtics, and they beat earlier in the week. And now the Celtics have Brown playing in this game, so there's no excuses. Now Bronson's out, so let's see how they do, and they come up with that win. Phenomenal performance by the New York Knicks. So the Knicks are back in action Tuesday. The Charlotte Hornets come to town to face the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. Charlotte has lost 3 straight after losing to Brooklyn on Sunday. they got washed by the Nets in that game. They were down by as much as 37 points in the third quarter. They ended up coming back a little bit, but they lost 102-86 in that game. The Hornets are just 20-46 on the season. The Knicks won the first two meetings between these two teams, the last one being a 121-102 blowout in Charlotte on December 2nd. The Hornets have been dealing with a lot of injuries all season, none more devastating than the ones to LaMelo Ball. He fractured his ankle last week and is expected to miss the rest of the season, so no LaMelo Ball in this one. I saw Coach Clifford talk about how he felt like the team has dealt with the bad luck that they've had well, with the exception of that Brooklyn game where they went down almost 40 points in the third quarter. So any concerns about a Knicks letdown coming into this game Tuesday where, again, expected to be heavily favored?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a classic trap game coming off the high of a Sunday night national television victory. It's also the Knicks' last home game before four-game road trip. They head out west after Tuesday's game. They play Sacramento, the Red Hot Kings, on Thursday night. But I would have said last Wednesday, when the Knicks had just beaten the Celtics in a huge win, that was arguably the best win of the season at the time, that the Nets were coming in and the Nets would be fired up and the Knicks might have a little bit of letdown. They blow out Brooklyn. Then they go down to Miami. Okay, the winning streak has to snap at some point. Two great wins at home. They're flying down to Miami. Maybe this is the game the Knicks kind of overlook. And, a Miami team desperate for a victory, no letdown. Beat Miami on a Randall double bang buzzer beater, fly to Boston. Okay, down, double digits in the second half. Maybe this is the game. Let go of the rope. Let's, regroup. This team doesn't do that. There's a lot of things to criticize Tibbs for, but he demands that these guys are accountable, or just seem to be motivated to play each and every game. So I would say that sure that you should be, it's on paper it's a spot for a letdown game, but this Knicks team have not given us any reason to believe that they're like teams of the past are headed that direction. But again, I think it's at least worth discussing whether not only should the Knicks continue to give Brunson another day off, because it's important to note he sprained or tweaked his right ankle Friday night in Boston. And then he went back to the locker room, had it taped, came back and played. It was his left foot that, he popped up on the injury report with left foot soreness on Sunday.
Yeah.
Tibbs downplayed the injury, said it's not that serious. I think that was his exact quote. But listen, anytime you have an NBA player, and everybody's a little bit dinged up, but enough for Jalen Brunson to sit out a game on national television against Boston with a chance for the Knicks to win 9 in a row, that worried me a little bit because this team is only going to go as far as Brunson goes. We'll see, what the injury report list, should come out later today. We're recording this Monday afternoon around noon. We'll see what happens, and what he's listed on the injury report for Tuesday's game. But I think they should definitely rest him for that game. He's going to fight to come back as soon as he's in any way, shape, or form close to playing. But not only should they consider sitting Brunson out, but letting him get an extended 4-day mini vacation, 4 days of rest. Maybe sit Randall out too. He's going to want to play all 82 this season, so I assume he probably won't. But even if he does play, as you mentioned, let him play 27 minutes and give Obi 18 minutes on Tuesday night and maybe Thursday or Saturday, whatever the case may be. Let Obi's minutes start to increase over the next couple of weeks while Randall's gets tailed down a little bit.
Yeah, I think to me, when I think of letdown, I don't really think of it for this Knicks team in this game as a letdown in mentality, because this Knicks team seems to have a mentality that is ironclad. It seems like a team that they're a seek and destroy kind of squad right now. They want to go out there and they want to beat you up and as I've been saying, lock you down. So I don't necessarily worry about them coming to the game with the wrong mentality and overlooking Charlotte. I worry about just the legs. Will they have the legs? Will they have enough energy left in the tank? I mean, that was a lot that they spent in that game against the Boston Celtics. You go double overtime. IQ plays the entire second half and then plays all of the both overtime periods. A lot of guys logging north of 40 and 50 minutes. That is where I get a little concerned coming into this game. Could they just come out and just not have the legs? Charlotte is awful. I mean, they really, if you look at their roster, they're just not a good team, but they are an NBA team. So if you really are as gassed the way the Knicks may be, any team can be dangerous. So I would be worried about that in this one. I think when I think about this matchup, the one matchup I think that is interesting because it's a guy that I love coming out of the draft, and he's starting to play really well, is Mark Williams. And a guy who I think in many ways, Charlotte looks at him and kind of wants to kind of mold him into a Mitchell Robinson type player. He's had some really impressive games. He had a 20 rebound game recently. And if you watch him at Duke, this is what he was doing at Duke. He's a monster on the basket, dunking alley-oops, blocking shots. I'm really interested to see that match between him and Mitchell Robinson in this one, because in some ways, I think Mark Williams is kind of like one of these young rising centers who we'll be talking about maybe in 3-4 years with Mitchell Robinson and being one of the better defensive anchors in the league.
Yeah, definitely. Mark Williams is from the Mitch Rob, Time Lord Rob Williams mold. A young, dynamic, athletic, high flying, big. So yeah, that another important matchup for Mitch. We didn't even mention him. 14 and 13 last night.
Yeah.
Continues to play at a very high level on both ends of the floor.
Hit some clutch free throws too.
Yes,
he didn't make a lot, but he made some. He made some.
Yep,
they had to make some. Yeah,
3 of 6. He made a one particular. The Knicks' final point was a Mitch Rob free throw, 1 of 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's obviously something to keep an eye on. Again, in the loss to Brooklyn, Bryce McCowan's played 20 minutes. Svi Mikhailuk, the former Knick, was on the bench for 9 minutes. Nick Richards, those are guys that the Hornets are going to have to rely on, from the bench. Whereas the Knicks are coming in with Josh Hart, IQ, if he's back on the second unit. That's where the Knicks can really separate themselves, from these lesser teams, because that's where you see usually, in a trap game, your stars will have a night off, but the Knicks aren't really reliant, as we've seen, on 1 player or 2 players or 3 players. It's that ability to kind of pick up next man up mentality that has really been a key driver in the Knicks' success. Especially over the past 3 months. And now, again, over the last 3 months, dating back to December 4th, Knicks 29 and 14. Only 2 teams in the NBA have more wins, the Nuggets and the Bucks. That's 3 months worth of data here. And so, again, Knicks have arrived. The Knicks are legit.
And I gotta get a bounce back game from Quentin Grimes,
Yes.
because one of the we didn't talk about was how awful he was in this one. That foul he had on Jaylen Brown was just drove me. I was maniacal after that foul. I could not believe how, in a play which you're up 3 and you're willing to give up a 2, he's trying to shoot the ball and then he grabs the guy's arm and it doesn't foul him hard enough to secure him not scoring a basket. Just a terrible play. He was pretty much a non-factor in this one. Too many times I thought in this game he was, making those drives on those closeouts and he's not looking to score. And we know he's a good passer, but he's got to also look to score. Like if the defense, I thought, and again, the Celtics, they're very well coached outside of some of the mistakes you saw in game from Joe Mazzulla. They knew the Knicks well. I mean, Grimes is driving baseline and they're looking for his passes. They were diving at Mitchell Robinson, diving at the guys at the 3-point line. And he only had 1 turnover, but he could have had like 3 because there were a couple of deflections and a couple of plays that I think maybe were called blocks that really were more steals, because Grimes got caught up in the air and didn't know what to do. And consider he didn't really play well in Miami either. He's got to play better, and I thought Tibbs did the right thing by gluing him on the bench after that foul. He didn't play the rest of the game, and he shouldn't have. Even though we know what Grimes could bring defensively, like you just got to be more in tune with what you're being asked to do or what the situation in the game is. That Knicks team in that huddle is saying, we can't foul, we'll give up a 2. You just can't make those kind of mistakes. So playing against a team like the Charlotte Hornets, he's going to have a lot of mismatches in this one. I think, especially in a game where Randall a lot of big minutes, RJ a lot of big minutes, like they're gonna need some of these other guys to step up. Like Grimes is the guy I want to see. Give me a 20-point game in this one, like just like he did against the Brooklyn Nets, where he, I think, really kind of was the difference in kind of making that game just like a laugher with him being able to shoot the ball the way he did. Grimes needs to be aggressive. He needs to make up for, I thought, 2 games which he can't have. Like those are playoff caliber games against the Heat and the Celtics. You can't have 2 points and 3 points in those games. Like that was unacceptable.
Agreed. Yeah, it's he's done a good job of bouncing back from bad games this season.
Yes.
And again, that's kind of the things you want to kind of fine tune and use these games down the stretch is kind of figure out how to get a guy more involved. Because there's going to be, maybe it's game 2, the second half of game 2 of a playoff series, where RJ's struggling and IQ's, maybe off that night. Grimes, because he's going to be on the floor because of what he contributes defensively. Need to find a way to get him going offensively when he's not knocking, when he's in a little bit of a slump.
Yeah, and then before we move on, I mean, just thinking about where the Hornets are. I mean, right now, they're fully invested in the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes at this point. They are one of the worst teams in the NBA. I think in terms of the standings, only Detroit has a worse record in the Eastern Conference, so they will have a decent shot. They should be among the bottom 4 teams that will have equal percentage shots at the #1 pick, along with San Antonio and Houston. Michael Jordan is their owner. Knicks fans very familiar with Michael Jordan, like most of the NBA is, but particularly what he did to the Knicks in the '90s. What do we think of just him as an owner at this point? I think there was excitement when he bought the team, originally the Charlotte Bobcats, then the Charlotte Hornets. But I don't know. It just feels like the Hornets have kind of perpetually been spinning their wheels with him in charge. It's kind of unclear how much basketball operations he's really, invested himself in. But I think that this Jordan ownership of the Charlotte Hornets hasn't really worked out the way I think that a lot of people hoped.
Yeah, I mean, they're this time last year they were one of the teams, that were viewed as like a really young rising
a
team.
rising team. Yeah.
LaMelo Ball, Rookie of the Year, great, vastly exceeding expectations. Miles Bridges playing at a very high level.
Yeah.
PJ Washington, some other units. I think the Bridges thing really set them back. As not just as a team this year, but as a franchise. He shouldn't be anywhere near a basketball court until that situation gets legally resolved. So who knows how that thing plays out? But that's a nightmare situation. The James.
I remember earlier this season there was a word that the Charlotte was thinking about bringing him in this year.
It was like a late Friday night news dump.
It was crazy.
They tried to sneak it in, and everyone was like, "Yo, no, like nah." And I think they may have used that, kind of floated the weather balloon to see which direction the wind was blowing, and then they realized maybe Adam Silver said, got on the phone and said, "Listen, this is not going to work." So yeah, the book night draft pick that was another miss. Terrible, So yeah, MJ hasn't been great, which isn't surprising. You see guys that are so talented on the floor when they kind of transition to coaching, or these really top talented players. There's a few that are exceptional. Larry Bird had some success both in the front office and on the sidelines. But the Isaiah Thomases of the world, we've seen that it's difficult to make that transition when you're a star, especially when you're a star player. You just have a different mentality. You come in from a different level. You see things a different way. Like it's probably difficult to accept players' limitations and not getting the max out of there. For all the things we love about Kobe, he probably would have been a terrible coach, because he wouldn't put up for a second with the player. Whereas sometimes you got to coddle them and understand that they're, if they don't have that maniacal mentality, it's difficult to relate to. So that might be some of the problems with MJ.
Yeah, some of these picks. I mean, you mentioned book night. We can talk about even Kai Jones is not really being able to do much. JT Thor, a young player who's getting some minutes now. It's just, I don't know. And then that Gordon Hayward signing, that didn't make any sense. And this is a team that made back-to-back play-in appearances and got blown out in both play-in appearances games. And now, again, squarely in the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes. And maybe this is where they should be, honestly. They get to the play-in, didn't get to the playoffs.
And there's like 4 teams in the mix. Like whoever gets Wembanyama, or if second place Scoot Henderson, that could change. Then all of a sudden you got Wembanyama and LaMelo Ball coming back next year. They're going to be predicted to make the playoffs by a lot of folks. So then you're selling out every night, and things are rosy. So as we know, so much depends on those ping pong balls.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with the Charlotte Hornets moving forward. But kind of, as Tommy mentioned, it's kind of wild to think of where we looked at them a couple of years ago and where they are now. I agree, the Miles Bridges thing really back. So speaking of off the court situations, I think it's important to address the biggest story in the NBA outside the New York Knicks, which is what's going on with Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies. So the team announced that he would be away from the team for at least 2 games. I know Shams positioned it as a suspension. I haven't seen the team say that, but he is away from the team. He wasn't in the game. The Clippers, they played the Clippers on Sunday. He was not there. He's not going to be at the Laker game as well this week. He posted an Instagram live video of himself brandishing a gun while partying at a club following the Grizzlies' loss to the Denver Nuggets on Friday. Morant issued an apology to the team and to the city of Memphis, saying that he will be taking this time to learn better ways to handle stress and his overall well-being. Morant has been the headline for multiple wrong reasons this season. He had there was a Washington Post article that was dropped last week where they highlighted allegations that he beat up a 17-year-old kid at his house, and then later showed up with a gun. There was the incident that happened with the Indiana Pacers during a game earlier this season, in which the Pacers traveling party believed that Morant or someone in his entourage pointed a red laser into their bus. There had been several incidents with Ja Morant on social media. A couple of years ago, the tweet, telling people that they could feel how hollows feel. There was the incident at a mall where he showed up with 20 guys looking to threaten a security guard. So not a lot of good things happening with Ja Morant right now, and he's now away from the team. How concerned should the league be with the Ja Morant situation right now?
Yeah, very concerned. He's a face of a franchise, essentially one of the promising young. We talk about teams on the rise. Grizzlies, had he not gotten hurt, did they make the finals? Maybe.
Right.
They were they were one of the best teams in the NBA last year. They are one of the best teams in the league this year when everyone's fully healthy. Jaren Jackson finally back and staying healthy and playing well. And not only for Morant, obviously personally, there's the Nike contract he just got involved with. We'll see how that plays itself out. From the personal perspective, I thought Jalen Rose gave a great kind of commentary on it, and I direct folks that are interested to that. I retweeted the NBA.
I did as well.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'll direct folks, because I can't comprehend one being a young, rich, famous black man in America today with $100 million in your bank account. Everyone knows you signed a $200 million contract. And Jalen Rose talked about just kind of how the pressures, the survivor's guilt of escaping a poverty-stricken situation, and the pull to wanting to be accepted by your peers and folks you grew up with, but the need to understand that there's a lot more at stake for you. I thought Michael Wilbon had some interesting comments on the situation as well. So I'd be interested in your take, but I think what Rose did was what was important from my takeaway from Rose's few minutes of talking about the situation is, yes, we can be annoyed at his knucklehead actions, but we should also approach it with some empathy, because this is a young man that seems to be dealing under the weight of some mental health issues or some stress in some ways. And to me, it'll be fascinating, and I think it's really important. I thought the statement he released was a good first step, but it's really important for him to acknowledge the wrongdoing and understand that he needs to change. Because it's one thing if we all say, hey, Kyrie Irving, you shouldn't, quote Alex Jones and promulgate his messages, or, anti-Semitism, etc. But if he's going to reply, be like, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, you guys losers. Like, you guys aren't on my mental plane, like he clearly doesn't understand what, he deleted his apology, that being the perfect example. Hopefully Ja understands, because when you get involved with guns, and we've seen far too often in this country, the destruction that can be wrought from firearms. I hope, for his sake and for the sake of the league, that he realizes the changes in his life that he needs to make.
Yeah, I think that I agree. Jalen Rose, again, I do encourage anybody to go check it out. He posted on his own Twitter account. It should still be up there. About he had it had to be like a 4 or 5 minute. I won't, definitely not a rant, I guess you would call it, like just a message to Ja Morant. Yeah. And a lot of it was talking about his own experience and his own life being in a similar position to Ja Morant. I think for me, the reason why I really enjoyed that Jalen Rose message to him was because I think it's different. You mentioned the Kyrie Irving thing. There's a major difference when you talk about firearms being involved, because now you're talking about, yes, what Kyrie did, there's a dangerous message that being put out there that could lead to violence. But Ja Morant dealing with guns in what it feels like now a cavalier way. There's too much evidence now to suggest that he thinks of guns and he treats gun and gun culture cavalierly. He tweets about shooting people. He's showing guns that says 70-year-old kids. His entourage is pointing lasers. He's messing around with a gun at a nightclub with a bunch of other people. Like, that could lead to direct violence. That could lead to someone directly being killed, whether it be himself or someone else. So that's why the messaging has to be, I think, a little tweaked and different. Yes, we can talk about he's making a lot of mistakes. He's going to ruin his life potentially. All that is true. But there's a chance that someone could be seriously hurt, whether it be himself or someone else, by how reckless he's treating having weapons or his attitude towards guns. So I think for me, that was, I think, the important thing to kind of get him to understand. Like, look, everybody can have their own opinions on what you think of gun ownership or whatever. I'm not really on that right now. It's just about if that's what you're going to be about. You cannot act like that. You cannot be so brazen. You cannot be so reckless. And look, I don't doubt that he's dealing with stress and mental health. Like, to me, like, I watched that video and said, this looks like a guy who's dealing with something, because that didn't make any sense to me. Like, even think about this. Like, Ja Morant is the leader of a team that is contending for an NBA championship. I watched that Memphis Grizzlies Denver Nuggets game. I watched that game. They got washed in the fourth quarter. I mean, they got outclassed. That was a game that was close, and then they just got run out of the gym. And you're playing against the maybe presumptive MVP, and you lose that game in that fashion. And the next thing you do, like, I kept trying to think in my head, like, yo, did they land in LA and he just went to a club? And I realized, no, he had much of that in Denver. It's like after that game and that performance, that's what he decided to do, was go to a club, go on IG Live, and shirtless, gun. Like, come on. Like, some of these things, like, you can kind of just see, okay, this person clearly is not in their right mind. Because some things don't add up. You can say, oh, he's stupid, whatever. It's like, no, I mean, come on. This is a guy who's trying to win an NBA championship. This is what he's doing after one of the worst losses of the season for their team. So I think
and when you mess around with guns, you don't even have to do anything malicious. Ask Plaxico Burress what happens when you slip upstairs and you have a gun in your pants, and yet how that can ruin a championship, a team that has championship aspirations.
Exactly. And these NBA teams, and I have a good pleasure of knowing some people who know NBA security. Like, these NBA teams have security that will essentially go with you wherever you want. They're not going to go to a crack house or anything crazy, obviously, but you want to go to a club, you want to wherever, they'll make sure they'll have armed people with you to secure and ensure that nothing bad happens. So the idea that he feels like does not need that, and that he can just go out there with just his crew, like, to me, it was even all like, the other thing I thought about too was, like, I mean, he just found like 20, 30 people to go to him in Denver. Like, even that to me was weird. It's like, so his entourage is traveling with him now, and this is what they're doing after games? Or did he just find 20, 30 random people and say, yo, we're going to just close down the club? Like, I don't know. Either one is bad. Like, there are just a lot of things about this that were disturbing. So I wish him well. Like, he's an extremely exciting player. He's one of the more exciting players that's come in this league in the last 10, 15 years. And he's an important piece of this league. I hope that he can get himself right. I think, what's most important is his well-being and ensuring that he doesn't, endanger himself. But I think if you're the Memphis Grizzlies, I think you do have to have real conversations about 100%. Where do you go at this point? Because there's too many instances now where this is a guy you're entrusting your entire franchise. And you think about what happened with the Wizards. You think about what happened with the Atlanta Falcons, like with Michael Vick. Like, you entrust your franchise in a guy, and something catastrophic happens with them, it could wreck your franchise. 100%. Wreck your franchise. So they're going to have tough conversations about what they do moving forward with Ja Morant, in my opinion.
Very tough conversations, because it's literally billions of dollars at stake for the league, and particularly the franchise, because that franchise goes as far as Ja Morant goes. Make no mistake about it. They can be a championship contender with him playing well and and keeping his nose clean, and they could head the other direction if not. And since we're a Knicks pod, it's probably worth mentioning Zion Williamson, the number 1 pick in that infamous 2019 draft, hasn't played in how long? Will he return again? Has he played a playoff game yet in his career? How many games has he missed versus how many games has he played? Ja Morant, the number 2 pick, and Knicks fans, rightfully so, are endlessly frustrated that they got the 3rd player in a 2-player draft. One of the reasons why you have faith in RJ is because he's been an incredibly upright professional, just everything you could ask for, from a locker room guy to the way he's handled the media, to the way he's handled his teammates, to the way he's handled his on-court and off-court persona. So those are all things that go into a career. It's probably worth mentioning. It's not, you don't want to jump to a conclusion too early about how one guy's a bust or one guy's clearly not as good as the other 2 guys. Availability is an important part of this business, and RJ, you can certainly say, has been available and played the right way since arriving in New York.
Yeah, could not agree more with that. And one final thought on this is, Adam Silver needs to get control of this league. Like, it feels like right now the equilibrium with the league is just completely off. like he's talked about players feeling deeply unhappy with being in the NBA because of all the stuff they get from social media and all the stuff. And I'm seeing Trae Young calling Atlanta radio hoes on Twitter. Like I'm seeing Kevin Durant saying people don't like watching him play; they can just stop watching him. I'm seeing Ja Morant in clubs toting guns, and it's like something's off. Something is not right. Like the NBA, and I know they're gonna barrel their way towards a CBA agreement that I don't know how much will fix things, but it just feels like right now things are not going in the right direction. And I think that this is a symptom of that. I really do. And I hope that Ja Morant gets help he needs, but I hope that the NBA gives him the support he needs as well, because this was not good.
And you know that there are, let's just say, there's a segment of folks out there that will jump on anytime the NBA goes in the wrong direction. Not just the Knicks themselves, but the NBA in general.
Yeah, exactly.
If there are missteps, they're looking to call them out for it, for reasons we don't have to get into. But
right, of course,
they are motivated to find things that are wrong with the league and show how this is an example of the culture wars that are incessant in society. And as far as Silver goes, might he have one eye on that Disney CEO
job
spot?
Exactly.
That's kind of maybe he's just trying to stay out of the headlines. We'll see. But I agree with you. Most importantly, directly to the point about Ja Morant, for his sake, most importantly for his sake as a human being, his mental health. Let's hope that he can surround himself with the right people, and that the Grizzlies can put him in a position with which he can succeed on the floor, off the floor, and that he's a happy person and a successful basketball player.
Yeah, man. If you care about Ja Morant's career, you care about his life, reach out to him. If you got a positive word. I don't know if it's Melo, Allen Iverson, Steven Jackson. I don't want to just name drop those guys. Those are guys that have talked about what it's been like to kind of be in the crosshairs of the commissioner and the crosshairs of street life in the NBA. And they've talked eloquently about that. If those guys are Jalen Rose or just guys in the NBA now, those guys can help him out, because Ja Morant being in his right state of mind is best for him, of course, but also best for the entire basketball community. So I think that's a good place to leave it on this episode of Orange and Blue Bloods. Tommy, let people know where they can find you.
At Tommy Beer on Twitter.
You can find me, EJ_Stewart on Twitter, Action EJ on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you again for listening to this episode of Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast from Audacy and WFAN. Be sure you can get these episodes wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service so you can get these episodes when we drop. Also, check us out on YouTube. You can find our videos on the Audacy Sports channel. That'll do it for now. Thank you guys for checking us out. For Tommy, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.